Pat Mayo Hour.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Hour, UFC 196, DraftKings Daily Fantasy MMA Breakdown. Myself, Pat Mayo. I don't know a ton about the old MMA. I'm learning, though. And the man who's teaching that to me, man, listen to me. Cody Saftik, what's happening, dude?
That's right. We say it's the old MMA, and MMA's not that old. And man, I'm still just a boy, Pat.
Hey, Daily Fantasy MMA is still rather new.
That is true.
And we're trying to win some money. We won money last week.
Cash game, baby.
It was funny. The cash game lineup had 5 winners on it, and they all won by decision. Wow. And it was good enough.
I didn't see that coming. Got like 291 points, and then, I won like $35. But hey, winning is always better than losing, Pat.
Hey, listen, I won more than $35. I entered it in a whole bunch of cash
That's
games.
That's the move.
So, listen, the GPP roster, not so great, but there are 2 early finishes on the card. I was like, uh-oh, I hope no one has these guys. And it turned out no one did. So it wasn't really that big of a deal. And I guess I have to let the people know that if you hear me mispronounce a name, because I don't know the names, and I haven't looked at the card yet, so there could be some crazy ones on there. I don't know. You're going to hear... and I shall hang my head in shame and be very embarrassed. But this is a big card. There's some big. Is this the biggest UFC card in a while?
Well, I would say it's probably the most anticipated fight of the year. Anytime you get Conor McGregor, it's going to be big business to begin with. But also, I mean, the fight with Rafael dos Anjos, that was going to do big business. But people at the back of their mind, it's kind of like, oh man, this is going to be so awesome. But dude, how in a dream world, how awesome would it be to see him fight someone like Nate Diaz? Well, now you're getting it. And, likely, depending on the outcome of this fight, you'll probably still get the RDA fight on, a UFC 200. So this is best case scenario for the UFC. And, hey, everybody likes them some Conor McGregor, so it's a big card.
So let's start with that fight. $11,000 Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, 8-4. He is a plus 333 underdog, minus 450 for McGregor, at least according to the odds, according to the DraftKings pricing. Obviously, Diaz taking this on short notice. It looks like Conor's going to kick his ass.
Yeah, that would certainly appear to be so. And you know what? Minus 420 is what the line is ironically at right now.
Why is that ironic?
Because Nate Diaz is known as a, user of the marijuana, the devil's salad. In fact, his brother's failed 3 post-fight drug tests for marijuana.
That's his brother. That's not him.
Yeah, but he's not exactly one to take his things super seriously. Even at they recently just did a little bit of a press conference at the UFC gym up in California, and they had them on the stage, and they asked Conor McGregor, they're like, this is going to be a big payday for you. What are you going to do with the money? And he talks about, I go to these, everybody treats me so nice in these stores, and they cater to me, and they put such nice material on my skin, and they're like, Nate, what are you going to do with your money? He's like, I'm going to buy a bunch of cool shit. And someone in the crowd yells out, a big bag of weed, and he just calmly goes, He knows what he's spending this money on, but he's going to get a career-high payday, I would assume, in the ball field of, let's say, $700,000 to maybe as much of $1 million. And he's taking that money, Pat, because he knows he's about to catch a beating, and it has to be worth his while.
Is that why? I mean, what's the weight for this fight?
Okay, so this is actually the funniest part about the entire situation. You've got the 145-pound champion of the world taking on a contender at 155 pounds, and they're going to be fighting at 170 pounds. So the reason why that is because Nate Diaz is technically taking the fight on 11 days' notice. There's no way he can cut the weight and come down. There's not a whole lot of 55ers that could cut the weight and make 55 comfortably. So what they decided to do is, let's take a 55er and give him the option of fighting at 160. So they tell Nate Diaz, would you like it at 160? He says, no problem. He calls back and says, you know what? I can't even make 160. I'll make 165. And then Conor McGregor said, hey, get comfortable, buddy. We'll do it at 170. So good times to go around in a highly anticipated one. But Conor McGregor, in my opinion, is going to thrash him, should thrash him. Does he knock him out in the first round? Maybe not. $11,000, that's not the most outrageous thing I've ever seen in my life. So is it worth a play on Conor McGregor? Yes. But buyer beware, you're not going to be able to afford a whole lot of other stuff if you do take McGregor.
Well, let me ask you this then. So if you think that the $11,000, maybe that scares a few people off him because the price is so high, maybe a better GPP play than a cash play, because if he doesn't knock him out in the first round and he's on your cash game team, $11,000, you want a knockout right away for that price, and it's going to limit what you can do. So for cash games, you want to take a traditionally safer team, like as we saw last week. If you just have 5 winners, even if they win by decision, you're going to be pretty good. And those are guys in the $10,000, the high $9,000 range. So for $11,000, that would strike me as, maybe I can afford someone else a bit down the card that maybe is a more guaranteed quick finish, right?
Fair, but I think if a lot of people are playing this card, and when you look at it, names like Tom Lawler, Jean Villante, and those are main card fighters. But that casual fan, they know Conor McGregor. Most people know Conor McGregor. So despite that he's $11,000, that's irrelevant. People are going to pay. I would go as far as to say he'll be the most played guy.
I agree.
As a result, they're going to take junk tank on the bottom end.
Yeah, but usually, GPP-wise, if you don't think that he's going to get the quick finish and be the highest known player, you shouldn't take him.
No, absolutely not. But Diaz is going to take a beating, so I don't really think there's any value there. How many significant strikes or takedowns does he get? Probably no significant strikes. He'll land a couple, but he's not going to get any takedowns. He's not going to get any advantage positions on McGregor. So for that reason, I don't think he's a good value play at all. There's other value plays on the card that we'll get to, I'm sure. But Conor McGregor, 11,000, I could definitely see a play on that for a GPP because you're so certain he's going to go out there and get the win. And you on a GPP, you can afford to take some more risk. On a cash game, I got to be safe. And as a result, I need to save that money. So I did not take him on a cash game.
I think I'm not going to put him on my GPP team in just hope he doesn't finish Diaz in the first round and then allow myself a bit more salary cap relief later on down the card, especially if he is going to be the highest owned guy.
I would assume
just let's say he appears on 40% of rosters. If he doesn't finish right away, those guys are basically done.
Yeah. That's the issue, right?
So if you play multiple lineups, especially in the tournament format, that might be a strategy to look at. Holm versus Miesha Tate. Holm coming off his first fight since Rousey?
Yes.
She is $10,800, a minus 350 favorite. Tate is 8-6. We usually like to load up on the women fights because there's a lot of strikes thrown back and forth. Generally speaking, Holm's a boxer too, kickboxer, right?
Yeah, you know what? She's done a lot of kickboxing back in the day, but she's predominantly known for her boxing skills. One of the best female boxers.
So a lot of striking.
Yes, and obviously that's translated quite well into the UFC, so to speak.
Is she a lock to win this?
I would say she's a lock to win this, but the reason why I'm not willing to pay that kind of price tag on her is that she's more of a volume puncher. She's not really a one-hitter quitter. And just look at the Ronda Rousey fight. Ronda Rousey essentially knocked herself out in that because she was so aggressive and she was just charging straight forward the entire time. She was just getting lit up. And still this girl made it, into the second round anyways. She still can make it past the first round. Even though she's getting bombed with straight lefts, even though her face is completely gashed open, she can still manage to take all this volume of punches. You look at Holly Holm's previous two opponents before that, Raquel Pennington and Marion Renault, it was a really lackadaisical approach. It was, I'm going to hang on the outside. If you want to come over here, I'm going to hit you. I'm going to cleanly win the fight. I'm going to win the decision here. But there's no really sense of urgency. Miesha Tate is going to try to pressure her, absolutely. And Miesha Tate's striking defense, not great. But the ability to keep shooting for takedowns, the ability to keep grinding, the ability to keep pushing forward, this is either going to be a unanimous decision Holly Holm, or it's going to be third, fourth, or fifth round stoppage for Holly Holm. So do I think she's worth the play? Absolutely. But for $10,800, maybe I would rather get somebody like a McGregor that'll finish before the third round, or maybe I can get someone, say, like a Vitor Miranda, who might be able to get a first-round finish.
Here's a name I know. Diego Sanchez.
Yeah.
$9,400. He used to be a thing like 10 years ago.
He's actually been fighting in the UFC now for 12 years.
He was on the first Ultimate Fighter, wasn't he?
Yeah. He fought in the Ultimate Fighter at 185. Then he came to the UFC, dropped down to 170. Then he furthermore dropped down to 155, where he challenged for a title unsuccessfully. And then in his last fight, he actually went down to 145. That 40-pound gap, that'll completely wreck your body. Your body is never going to be the same.
So he's $9,400. He's taking on Jim Miller at $10,000. Do you have a leaning either way in this fight?
Absolutely not. I want to say Jim Miller. I just think at 32 years old, not necessarily so much more younger, but he's just a little fresher and somebody that has better footwork, better hand speed, better technical boxing. But at the end of the day, Diego Sanchez thrives in situations like this. He thrives in situations where you're going to engage him. And Jim Miller, a blue-collar guy, he'll engage him. Jim Miller is known for his grappling and his wrestling ability. And when he wins fights, he takes guys down and he submits them. And we've seen him struggle against guys like Yancy Medeiros and Fabricio Camões. But what's he able to do? Get them to the ground and submit them. Diego Sanchez, good luck taking this guy down. And if you do get him down, good luck holding him down. He's a big guy. He's going to get back up. The problem is he always leaves his chin way up in the air when he fights. Now, he's got 7 losses. He's never been knocked out. He got stopped due to a cut in the 5th round when his challenge for the UFC title at 155. This guy's almost as durable can get. But he's certainly coming now near the end of his road. And to be honest with you, this fight is going to go decision. And for that reason, why would we want it?
Is bet on decision like a good bet?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that's the move. Both guys are known for their durability, and even though Miller's coming off a submission loss in his last fight, Diego Sanchez is not going to get on his back and choke him out. Let's be real here.
All right, maybe that's the one bet I'm going to make. Bet on decision in this fight. Is there any better bet on the card you can see?
Go in the distance. In terms of value on the actual card, there's a couple people I like. Ilir Latifi, most notably.
Queen Latifi, he's back.
Queen Latifi. I love when people say that, actually. But he just looks like Matty Sarge, a little fire hydrant, bald guy, super powerful. In his last 3 fights, he's knocked the guy out in the first round. And no knock against John Villante, but not someone with the strongest chin, so to speak, and someone who has been exposed in the past. So can the sledgehammer go out there and knock him out? I certainly think so. And if you want to bet him inside the distance, that's where you get your real value.
What is that paying right now?
It was 190 is just the straight up, and I think inside the distance was like plus 115.
Well, that's not bad.
That's not bad.
He's a minus 200 favorite right now. Latifi,
Yes.
He's also 10-2 on DraftKings. Villante is 9-2. So is Latifi going to appear on your cash team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's very safe. If he gets the win, I think he gets the win comfortably. If not, as I mentioned, this is a guy that's knocked out his last 3 opponents in the first round. So clearly he has a high degree of power. And when you look at Jean Villante, what are the things that Jean Villante does well? Well, he's a big body. He's an athletic guy. I believe he wrestled at Hofstra University.
Hofstra, like Marcus Colston went there.
Yeah, and he played football on the team as well.
He probably knows Marcus Colston.
He's a dual athlete. He's a young, good-looking guy. As I said, big body and the kind of guy that can grind on you and wrestle you and do different things. When you look at Latifi, good lord, because he's so short, he's like 5'10", he probably should fight at middleweight, but he doesn't. He fights at light heavyweight, and as a result, he's got that much mass that he can put on his body. He's pretty much the thickest dude I've ever seen in my life. He's so unbelievably thick, Pat. And as a result, getting him down, good luck. Rashad Evans, who trains at the Black Zillion gym, he said himself, said Latifi came down here for training camp, and we couldn't take the guy down. Like, he's unbelievable wrestling ability, and because he's so short and stocky, he can land those punches. Now, against good level strikers, against high-level guys in the UFC, a guy like Gegard Mousasi, a guy like Jan Blachowicz, they're long, they're savvy, they're not going to let him get down there. Jean Villante, boy, oh boy, he's been knocked out by lesser talent, let's say that.
Brandon Thatch versus, all right, here we go.
Here we go. I was waiting for this one.
Sayar.
Yep.
All right, so 1 for 1 there.
You had it. You should just commit it. You had it.
Bahadurzada.
Yeah, Bahadurzada. Sire Bahadurzada. Sire the Great.
Boom!
Boom.
Bell. I don't have a bell, but if I had a bell,
You add the bell in post. Ding.
Perfect.
Nice.
You didn't have to do the ding because I was going to add it in post.
Were you going to add it in post?
I was going to until you did the ding, so do it again. All right, you wrote down the time. There we go. That's what it will appear.
And a noise will appear during that time frame.
Yo, absolutely. $8,500 Thatch, 10-9. That's very expensive. He's a minus 300 favorite. Does Thatch just clean his clock here?
Yeah, actually, so I decided to go with Sayar Bahadurzada on my GPP just because you're going to get so much value on him. And literally, he's been off for 2 years. But what we do know about this guy, power for days. If you stand in front of him, he will cold cock you and he'll likely put you out. Now, I'm on Team Thatch all day, baby. Way taller, way longer, better striker, and he's not taking this 2-year layoff. When he loses fights, it's to the absolute creme de la creme in the division. So I know that he's somebody who's a very, very tough fighter. And because he's having these 2 bad performances, maybe people write him off. When I see this price, though, clearly nobody's writing him off. That's a very expensive price.
But again, if he's $100 less than McGregor. So if you think that McGregor is going to be the super popular play, it almost makes sense to maybe pivot off of McGregor and go on to Thatch if you think he has a better chance of a quick finish because fewer people are going to own him and maybe he finishes quicker.
Yeah, well, here's a little story for you. So Brendan Thatch was actually supposed to fight 2 weeks ago in Pittsburgh, right? And then the last second, the Pennsylvania Commission was like, what's this medication you have? And he's like, oh, this is my heart medication. And they're like, you can't take this, right? So he's like, well, I can't fight without it. So they're like, well, your fight's canceled. So the UFC was like, okay, well, what commission in the U.S. would allow him to take this heart medication? Colorado, which is where he's from, that's his home state, and Las Vegas. Sweet, we're moving to Las Vegas. Now, do I really want to pay 10-9 on someone who's admittedly taking heart medication, who's lost his last 2 fights, who got dropped in his last fight prior to getting submitted? No, that's a tad bit risky for me.
Yeah, but we're talking about GPP, and that's what you want. You want a risky team. A low ownership, risky guy. That's perfect.
So why not take Sayar Bahadurzada, who you're going to save a lot of money on, great value. He's fighting a guy who's got a heart problem, apparently. And as I mentioned, if he lands on him, he's going to land huge. He spent this entire training camp. He normally trains in the United States. In Europe. He spent this entire training camp over at Greg Jackson's, training with guys like John Jones, who I know is much larger than him. But the amount of bodies he's going to have there is certainly going to help him. Can he expose a guy like Brendan Thatch? It's possible. Do I think it's going to happen? Not necessarily. But for the value I get for him on GPP, if he wins, Pat, he'll win in spectacular fashion. And if he wins, Pat, very few people are going to play him. And that, to me, is what GPP is all about.
And he is someone that can allow you to afford McGregor, too.
Yeah, and my last point on this guy is the UFC made him change his nickname. Because before he made it to the UFC...
The Syrian bomber?
He was the Afghan killer.
Okay.
And they were like, yeah,
it had to be something very
doesn't really fly here. So now he's Sayar the Great.
That's a great name.
It is.
I like that. Is he truly great, though?
Well, that remains to be seen.
He could be.
He's been off for 2 years.
Hey, if he's on your GPP team and he wins us some money, he has earned that nickname. I'm not going to lie to you.
I've seen him one-punch a guy before, so if that happens again, my GPP team is laughing.
Jason Saggo, 10-4 on DraftKings versus Justin Don't Make Friends with Salas. $9,000. Any opinion either way?
Yeah, I didn't really want Jason Saggo in the beginning because he's coming off an Achilles tear that has kept him off for 16 months. And blowing out your Achilles heel, man, I've never experienced it, but from people I've talked to, not a good time. And it's not really the kind of thing that you bounce back from right away. And he's shown in the past that his cardio, not great. But what this guy does have, Pat, is in his 10 wins, he's finished all 10 guys. He's a black belt under Royler Gracie. He's a very smart individual. He's fought pro Muay Thai for a couple years back in Thailand. He's literally traveled the world learning martial arts skills, and that's all well and good. Now you got Justin Salas. He's a former D1 American wrestler out of Wyoming.
That's usually what you like, though, D1 wrestlers.
Yeah, out of Wyoming, though. This is not Ohio or Iowa or Nebraska or some great state like that.
Yeah, but is he a champion, though?
No, just a D1 guy, and he admittedly dropped out of college to pursue MMA. Well, how's that going for you, bud? You're 2-3.
He's in the UFC. He's going all right.
Yeah, he's 2-3 in the UFC. In all 3 of his losses, he got finished. He got choked out twice and he got knocked out once. No, he got knocked out twice, choked out once. Jason Saggo's got enough striking to hurt the guy, but more so he's going to be able to get the fight to the ground. If he does get the fight to the ground, he chokes him out. I wasn't huge on this fight in the beginning, and for 2-1, I don't really like it. But to be honest, I think the value is good on DraftKings, and I played him, I believe, on both my teams, on GPP. Nope, just my GPP team, but I think he's a pretty safe guy.
Any quick finishes you can see on the card that we have not talked about?
Yes, Vitor Miranda. This guy's 37 years old, which I don't like, and not fighting in Brazil, which is another thing I don't necessarily like. But, man, he's a big dude with very, very good striking credentials. We've seen in his past 2 performances in the UFC, fighting good level of competition and knocking them out. And now he's getting a matchup with Guimaraes here, who's literally just squeaked by.
Guimaraes?
He has squeaked
Gian
by.
Guimaraes? Fade both?
They just punch you in the face when you're not looking. It's like, what the hell was that all about?
Hey,
man?
Is that a win, though, or is that a DQ?
That would be a DQ.
Okay.
Which is good if you've picked against him. So with Guimaraes, I mean, literally he will be cut after this fight. I don't think he does particularly well. Vitor Miranda is expensive at $10,700. But when you look at it, when you break it out on paper, if McGregor's going to beat Diaz, I think it happens in the 2nd or 3rd round. If Holm wins, I think it happens in the 3rd or 4th round. If Vitor wins, he could win in the 1st or 2nd. And because he's a little bit cheaper, and that's going to allow me to save a couple $100, $100 that I can allocate to different places, I think that he's the pick over those 2.
10-7. That would be the move then. Yeah. So he's going to be the anchor of your cash team then.
Yes.
So who else is going to show up on your cash team? Eric Silva?
Yeah, Eric Silva, 10,300. I'm not huge on this guy, to be honest with you, but when he fights guys that are not spectacular, he looks spectacular. And when he fights guys that are a little ranked above, he certainly has troubles. Nordine Taleb is a big, durable guy, but he just plods forward. He doesn't really have much of a striking game. His grappling game is mediocre at best. He trains at TriStar, so everyone will always be quick to, Faraza Hobby and George St. Pierre. Well, this guy really hasn't benefited from much of that. I've seen him lose really low-level fights. If you want to speak about low-level fights in this guy, he tried out for the Ultimate Fighter twice, okay? The first time he lost to Mike King, who then tested positive for massive amounts of steroids and no longer fights for the company. It was not very good to begin with. And the second time makes it onto Canada versus Australia. Remember I used to watch that?
Yep.
Okay, so he fights a 19-year-old guy named Tyler Manero, right? That guy beats him. This 19-year-old Australian guy with very little skill set beats him. And then that guy, turns out he's a mad racist, and the UFC rescinds his offer, and he never makes it to the UFC. Then he follows up those performances by getting smoked by guys like Warley Alves, barely grinding out, just awful wins. He's slow, he plods forward, and to be honest, I think he's in for a beating here. The problem is Eric Silva has not looked as good as he has in recent years, but that's because he's fighting better guys. This is not a better guy. Eric Silva should beat him up. 10,003, I can 100% justify that, so sign me up.
Let's talk about your teams overall here. Let's start with your cash team. DraftKings for UFC 196. Give it to me.
Okay, so cash game. We're starting off with Vitor Miranda. As I mentioned, I think he gets the finish. He's going to anchor the team. Hopefully he can get me that first round finish. I'd love that 100 points. But regardless, I think that he is safe and he's going to probably get a finish at some point or just score a decent amount of points. I can justify that. Moving on, as we talked about, Eric Silva. I just think the way he matches up against a guy like Nordine Taleb, he should be able to use his footwork, his superior striking abilities, his speed. All those things should be able to catch Nordine, and I'm thinking maybe even a second round stoppage, which I like. Ilir Latifi, 10,200. That's a lot of value as far as I'm concerned. Because can this guy go out and knock out Jean Villante? Absolutely. In fact, that's kind of what I see happening. And once again, I think he's pretty safe. So I got Vitor Miranda, Eric Silva, and Ilir Latifi, and I think I got 3 finishes here. Well, let's throw Amanda Nunes on there. $9,900. The only reason I don't think she gets the finish is sometimes in women fights, it's not necessarily as easy as I'm just going to hit the girl one time and she's going to go down. Amanda Nunes has knocked out girls in the past, but Valentina Shevchenko is 57-1 as a pro kickboxer, and she is very, very good in the kickboxing department. The one advantage that Nunes is going to have here is that Nunes is a big 135-pound girl. A big 135-pound girl. Valentina Shevchenko fights at 125. The UFC doesn't have 125 for girls. They got 115 and 135. She can't cut the extra 10 pounds.
So she's going up an extra 10 pounds.
And she's a small little girl. She's a small girl who is a good striker. But what happens, and this is the beauty about MMA. Back in the day, if you were good at something, someone was bad at something, then you're going to beat them up. But when it didn't matter of size didn't matter. But now that people know how to do everything, size matters 100%. Because these grappling exchanges are now going to favor Nunes. The fight hits the ground, it's going to favor Nunes. And if they're going to strike, well, Nunes can take these strikes and keep plodding forward. She's very talented, and her move to American Top Team has made a world of difference for her. So for 9,900, I'm 100% going to play that. I don't think she gets the finish, but I think she cleanly and safely wins the 3 rounds, scores me some good points, gets the win bonus. I like it.
So you're looking at something like, let's say, even if she just wins by decision after 3 rounds, and maybe you get lucky and get into a finish.
Could happen.
And you're saying that's her winning is just a high probability outcome. So what you're saying is the minus 150 bet probably isn't a bad idea either.
No, not at all. I actually like that.
What about 150 and what about just her by decision?
That just betting the fight to go by decision is probably pretty. I would assume that the bookie's going to be on that, and it'll probably be minus 200 or something plus 200, minus 200 probably by the distance. But if you want to take Amanda Nunes and you want to take her specifically by decision, then yeah, you're going to get plus money on that.
Yeah, see that sounds good. So the last player on your team is
Teruto Ishihara.
See, I didn't want to try to pronounce that.
This one's pretty straightforward. I mean, you're looking at it. Teruto.
Listen, I'm not really looking at it. I'm glancing at it.
Oh, okay.
To the bottom of my eye here. It's not going to be good for me.
Yeah. Now, there's obviously reasons why he's valued so cheap, and there's obviously reasons why he's a 2-1 underdog. But hey, let's throw that aside here. The fact that I like him in a cash game is that the opponent that he's facing, Juicy J, Julian Erosa. Now, Julian Erosa is not known as a finisher. He fought in the Ultimate Fighter 3 times, won 2 of them, lost 1, never finished anybody, fought in the finale, never finished his opponent, the Polish Zombie. He's not really a finisher. He doesn't fight very tall. He's 6'1", which at 145 pounds is gigantic. But he doesn't fight tall. He's extremely hittable. Ishihara's got a great straight left. He's a young guy. I think he's 5'7" against 6'1". That is a problem to me. But Julian Erosa does not fight tall. He's got great footwork, but he never uses his jab. He kind of just crouches because at the back of his mind, he thinks you're going to shoot a takedown on him. Now, what we've seen from Ishihara is that he fades a little bit, he gasses a little bit, but he's got mad power. And against Mizuta Harada, who's a very experienced veteran, he drops Harada 3 times and ends up getting a draw out of it. Very weird draw. But now I think full training camp, better cardio, save striking ability, and the fact that Erosa does not fight tall and is extremely hittable. Could Ishihara come in there, land that shot, put him down? Yes. And even if he does lose, I think he scores a significant amount of points, enough that I can justify putting on my team for 8,900. And as you mentioned to me the other day, and it was a great point, if Vitor Miranda wins, and Eric Silva wins, Latifi wins, and Nunes wins, but I got 3 finishes in my top bid, if I can get 275 there, plus Amanda Nunes, that's around 350. I don't even really care how Ishihara does, but he'll score enough to me that I could probably get as many as 350, 375, 400 points.
And realistically,
who's going to beat me in a cash game if I score 400 points?
And no one is. And, I mean, you're going to cash in a GPP if you score 400 points, too. But, I mean, the threshold, realistically, that I've seen week to week, I mean, obviously it varies depending on the amount of finishes, the amount of upsets, and
who you're
that
playing.
happens on a card.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you're just looking to beat half the field in the cash game. So, out of 100 people, if you finish 50th, you're still going to double your money. It's not that big of a deal. So, if you can score around 300, you're going to win your money back.
I think that the top 3 people could score the 300. And then I've got 2 good plays. Manda, super safe. And then Ishihara, who could definitely pull it off. And if he doesn't, he's not going to get finished. He'll go the 3 rounds and still score you 40 points.
Well, tell me how your GPP team differs a little bit from your cash game, because you want to lead it with Conor McGregor.
Yeah, leading with Conor McGregor.
Which is a move I don't like, by the way.
Fair enough, because he is expensive. But when you think about it...
It's not the expensive part, though, because game theory, and this is where I come in.
Okay.
The one thing that I can do...
This is what I like.
So, McGregor, as you said, is going to be one of the most popular cards. I bet you the DraftKings numbers are way up for it for people participating and playing in daily fantasy. And most people are going to play these tournaments, not the cash games, because people like to enter for $3 to try to win 5,000. Because that's just how people are. Yes. So, if 50% of the field owns Conor McGregor, and he's the most expensive player. But let's say he's not the highest scoring player, which you've admitted he might not be. Fair. If he doesn't finish in the first round, and this goes maybe 2, maybe 3 rounds, he still wins anyway. Like, he's a lock for a lot of points, let's say, but not the most points. He's just not worth it if 45% of people are going to own him, because you can take someone better at an equivalent price, because let's say, I don't know, your guy Miranda.
Yeah.
If people take Miranda... Generally speaking, they probably, on your GPP team, yes, you've afforded both, but you went with 2 scrubs at the bottom. Most people will not afford Miranda and put them on their team if they go McGregor as well.
Yes.
But you think the Miranda's a better fantasy play this week?
I just think you're going to get better value on him, and it's something like a cash game when you need to be able to afford. If I don't take Miranda, if I take Conor McGregor, well, I can't afford Amanda Nunes. If I don't afford Amanda Nunes, it just kind of throws the dynamic of the team off. When I think about Conor McGregor, it's like, okay, I think he's a lock to get the win here. Now, whether he knocks him out in the first round, the second round, the third round, people are pretty much on the same page here that he's going to knock him out. Will a lot of people play him? Absolutely. But it's similar to, I always bring up the example of a Ronda Rousey. If you're so certain that this girl's going to score big, maybe she's not the highest score. But if she's top 3 scores, then I can justify it. And because I'm going GPP...
But the thing with Rousey was different because she was finishing people in 10 seconds. She was scoring the most points by far.
Right, and how did Conor McGregor's last fight go? He knocked the guy out in like 13 seconds.
But you've already told me that you don't think that's necessarily how this goes.
Yeah, and I told you last time I didn't think that was how it was going to go. And guess what? That's how it went. This guy's so dynamic. He's so precise. Nate Diaz is literally stands in front of you with his hands not particularly high, but he's so flat-footed. He's not dynamic. He's not an athlete. He's the quintessential fighter. He's the quintessential when you go to high school and there's kids that are able to play sporting teams. He doesn't. He's the guy that gets high and fights at recess, right? That's who he is. Now, as a result, he's a durable guy. As a result, he's an experienced guy. I'm not disrespecting his skills in the slightest bit. But at the end of the day, I've got a real martial artist here against a guy who's trying to say pull ninja stuff and give him a Stockton slap. Like, I just don't think it's going to go well for him. Now, Nate Diaz has been knocked down in the past. It was a head kick, but he was knocked down in the past. And what led to that knockout? The fact that his opponent, Josh Thompson, was much faster than him, had better footwork. Conor McGregor has leaps and bounds better footwork and is much, much, much faster. I think that straight left's going to slam right into his jaw, and maybe it knocks him out in the first round. Maybe it waits until the second round. But either way, for $11,000, I'm going to take that play, to be honest with you.
All I'm saying is that in tournament play in GPPs where people are playing multiple entries and there's thousands and thousands of entry, if you just fade McGregor and he doesn't win right away and it goes to the third round and then he wins, you've basically eliminated half the field.
Yeah.
And game theory-wise, it dictates
big.
that you should do that.
Fair enough.
So if you want to play 2 teams, play a McGregor team, play this team where you have McGregor and Miranda on it, and hopefully that wins. I mean, that'd be awesome. You're playing it. I'm going to end up playing it. I hope that wins.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it is worth investigating to build a non-McGregor team and entering that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So give me the rest of your team.
Okay, well, as we mentioned, after Conor McGregor, we got Vitor Miranda, 10,700. And essentially, if you're not going to go Thatch or Holm, I mean, this is the next most expensive guy you can get. Probably gets that second or first round finish. Love it. Moving on, Jason Saggo, 10,400. As we talked about, his black belt alone is probably going to get this fight to the ground. I mean, he's going to use his body lock takedown to get the fight to the ground. But once the fight does get to the ground, he's so fantastic of grabbing your back. Once he takes your back, he chokes you out. Justin Salas, well, I've seen him get his back taken and gotten completely choked out.
Can't make friends with Salas.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't seem like he has a whole lot of friends these days. 33 years old, pretty much over the hill, 2-3, going to get cut after this loss. Not a good place to be in your life. Now we got Teruto Ishihara, and we talked about this on the cash game. 8,900. Can he go and get a knockout? Yes, he absolutely can. If he does, great for GPP.
That would be unbelievable. If you can get a knockout from an $8,900 player, you're making the money. Yeah. Unless you just have every other fight wrong.
Oh, that's a problem. And as I just talked about, if I can get 400 points, then I can probably win. Well, then when you think about this team, it's like, well, McGregor's probably a lock for around that 80-point mark. I mean, he really is. Vitor Miranda probably get a finish. Jason Saggo probably get a finish. If Ishihara can get a finish, great. That 300-400 points I can get right there, I'm good. Sire Bahadurzada, do I think he catches a beating?
Sire the Great.
Sire the Great. Do I think he catches a beating here by Brendan Thatch? Personally, yes. But GPP is all about taking that risk. For $8,500, I got $500 left over on this team, by the way.
Which is another way to differentiate your team in tournament play, because as we see, when there is a limited amount of fights and only 5 spots, and the guys are a very particular price, and someone like McGregor is going to be so popular, people are going to have very similar teams.
Yes.
That's just the way it's going to work out. And most people, just through instinct, want to use up all of their salary cap, and by leaving some money on the table is a very wise move, I think.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, in this card, there's 12 fights on the card. I pretty much think that the favorites are going to run shop. I think the favorites win in basically every single fight on the night. But the fights that the dog does have a chance is Ishihara, and hey, someone like Bahadurzada. And the thing is, there's always going to be upsets on the card. If these two guys are the guys that upsets, and you got McGregor, Vitor Miranda, and Jason Saggo, good Lord, that could be a very, very, very high-scoring team. And if it is, great times to go around. Money from my pocket.
Cody Saftik. Check him out on the Bookie Beatdown with fantasy bachelor expert Paul Shaughnessy.
Oh, he's the best at that.
He's unbelievable.
Actually, he's number one in this tournament we're in with these American handicappers. He's picking 67% on the UFC pick. I'm fitting 7th. I'm going to get him. But he's sitting number 1 right now. So not only is he a pretty good bachelor predictor.
He's just picking.
Yeah, because he just, oh, this guy's a shitty person. I bet he's going to lose. And he does. Same thing. He's just like, oh, that girl conniving, gonna get eliminated.
He knows.
And she does.
Shaughnessy knows it. So he'll be on the Fantasy Bachelor Breakdown this week. But you can follow Cody on Twitter at CJSaftic. And remember to subscribe to the Bookie Beatdown at Bookie_Beatdown for all your MMA, gambling, and more DFS needs. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME. And remember, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Hour on YouTube and iTunes under the Pat Mayo Hour. I'm Pat Mayo, and I'll see you next time.